given this series a new name. It's called Run, Fat Boy, Run. Now, this is meant to be a bit of an insult, a bit of a slight, or a bit of humour against myself. And the reason being is because actually I gained so much weight in the past few years, and there's probably going to be a whole different series or piece of content in relation to that in the future. But for now, I'm trying to deal with this huge weight gain, and thankfully it stopped. I'm not going to give details of numbers or anything at this point, but it stopped, and going for runs is just going to be one small part of me getting back in control of all forms of health things: exercise, supplements, nutrition, and my actual weight as well. So yeah, we've changed the name from Life on the Run to Run, Fat Boy, Run, and it's meant to be a little bit of humour aimed at myself. Today's run was out in Bonnybridge, in my favourite place to run, which is on the canal. The reason why I like to run on the canal is because it's quiet. There's not really a lot of people, and for me especially, there isn't any noise. I don't like to run with anything in my ears, so I can actually find that noise coming in from cars and stuff is just super annoying, exhaust and all that sort of thing. So I like to run down the canal in Bonnybridge towards Falkirk. I didn't make it as far as the Falkirk wheel because I was only going to run as far as last week's target suggested. So I went out to run 4K. I only managed 3K, and I was running in 0.5K intervals with a 0.1K walking break. Because that succeeded, I managed to run 3K at those intervals. There was two choices today when it came to planning the next run. One, I can run a higher interval, which I chose at 0.75K, and two, I can change distance. But I didn't have to change distance because 0.75K is 4 intervals to make the 3K. Sorry, that's a lot of numbers. So I had a bit of a choice. I knew I was going to get to the second interval at 1.5K and decide, right, what do I do next? I thought, right, well, I'm going to walk in the direction that I'm heading towards the Falkirk wheel. I'm not going to turn for home yet, because psychologically that's like a bit of a thing for me. So I got to the end of the walking window and decided, you know what? Yeah, I can run the next 0.75 in this direction. So I carried on towards the Falkirk wheel, and I got out to, would have been 2.25 kilometers. And at that point I was like, okay, I do not want to carry on towards the Falkirk wheel. I'm going to start heading back. And it was at the start of that 4th interval that I knew I didn't want to run any further than 3.75 kilometers today. I knew. I thought, I'm giving this all everything I've got. I've already got the win of increased intervals. I know I'm going to have increased average pace, and I know that I'm going to increase distance to 3.75K. So there's 3 wins in this run already. I don't need to be a hero and go up to 4.25 or 4.5K or whatever it was going to be. That was how the rest of the run ran out. And actually, I was able to do something really cool in the last interval. There was this little old couple running in front of me, and they certainly were not racing me, but I didn't want to finish behind them. So I made a whole point on the last interval that I was going to actually, but not race pace, because I'm nowhere near race pace. But the difference between the intervals was that on the first 4, I was easily above 7-minute kilometers. And on the last one, I was able to bring it down to like a 6.5-minute kilometer average. So that's a bit more like a racing finish. And anytime I've ever done parkrun and stuff like that, I've always been able to have a racing finish on me. So yeah, it felt like 4 big victories in today's run, and that's the whole purpose of this sort of mini series on my Patreon and on YouTube as well now, is that I'm going to be running these distances and showing how I've done it piece by piece, step by step. I'm all about making 1% gains, but I think, you would say that today's run is you can call it a 4% gain if we're going to look at it that way. 4 big increments have happened, so I'm going to just call that a 4% gain. It's not meant to be 40% better or 50% better than last time. It's 4% better than last time, and that's a big one. So next week, can I get 1% better, and then take it from there? The other big framework, psychological framework, that I'm proving also through these posts and through this content and through these running activities, is the motivation and momentum cycle, which is going to pop up on the screen just now. So as you can see in the diagram, it's going to say motivation with an arrow to momentum and back to motivation. When you don't have motivation, this diagram shows that you need to generate some momentum. So a week ago when I went for that first run, I was motivated to go for the run. So I didn't need to run, I didn't need to do anything to create that momentum. But the running itself is momentum. And the momentum I generated last week leads to this week's motivation to run. And all the other things that I've been doing this week in terms of minding my nutrition and that sort of thing, and these sort of stuff that I'll talk about later. But purely for the running series. Last week's run was the momentum that generated this week's run's motivation. This week's run is the momentum for next week's run's motivation. And I know lots of different things can take place in that time, but see, as long as I'm getting those 1% victories, or today, 4% gain, as long as I'm making those victories and I can aim for targets that can slightly nudge me forward, I'm always going to feel motivated. So that was something I wanted to bring into this area as well. So through the running today, and we are proving the motivation and momentum cycle. And this is something that you can use in your existing life as well. It doesn't matter what the goal is. You just have to choose to start something. There's your momentum. Carry that momentum into the motivation for the next time you want to get better at that thing. Or it could be to go and try a different thing. But the motivation and momentum cycle continues. And if you don't take control of it, you're going to find yourself in a demotivation cycle, which is demotivation, loss of momentum, demotivation, going backwards, demotivation, falling down completely. We don't want to be in this cycle, but you have to choose one. If you choose to be in the motivation cycle, you will stay in the motivation cycle. And that's the end of today's post. So thank you very much for listening, reading, watching, wherever it is that you're finding this content. I really appreciate it. And I'll speak to you again soon.